Hi, you guys. I had a false start there. Do I need to show this? It's funny. I had accidentally pushed the enable for kids button, which didn't allow the chat to be there. Go figure. So, anyway, feels like a while since I've done this. I don't know why. Did I not show up last week? I might not have. Well, I think I did. There's a lot of little things I wanted to share. Things. I'm sorry, I just ate one of these paleo bars. I like them. They're called paleo bars. I think I bought them in bulk in Costco. A nice, simple, vegan, healthy treat. Not that Paleolithic people had snack bars. I tell you, what has our world come to? I want my paleo cookies. Anyway, I'm not on a paleo diet. I just find it more interesting. Where do I start? My health is looking better. I don't want to get too much into it other than to say I was on an antibiotic for 2 weeks, which now I'm off. So I'm going to load up on some probiotics. Hopefully that'll take care of things. I guess I had some issues with one doctor, and it wasn't stockpiled, but over the years, there were just a few things that just happened. And I thought, well, I'll let it go. And I hadn't seen him in years. And then this situation, he's a specialist. I went to go see him. And I just would say, well, he was having a rough day. I mean, the gist of it is he was kind of scowling at me and was kind of anti-supplement. Like, why would you take a supplement? I said, even sheepishly, vitamins, even? Like, is it okay? And he says, well, do you eat right? I mean, this is how he was talking. And I will say, to admit, I felt like standing up and walking right out and saying, look, I'm not doing this. And, but I didn't. And at the time, I felt good to say he's having a bad day. And it was because I had some elevated numbers, and perhaps what I had taken, which was a glandular, could have elevated it. But you know what? I was acting innocent. I didn't need to be scowled at. It made me think, do I, as a therapist, do this? Like, do I have bad days? And I think that's a good place for any healing person to be. At the end of the day, though, I thought, I need to, and I share this. Why I share this is because if you want to get better, I say you need, but you would want to go to some place where you feel they really care about you, that they want to see you succeed, that they're giving out encouragement for healing. And not everybody in the healing profession actually does that. Words are very powerful. And I'm in this class in mind-body medicine, and a lot of times we have to undo what doctors have told people, like you'll never walk again, or you'll have pain the rest of your life. I mean, if you think about it, and this sounds a little bit negative on doctors, they'll say, well, we don't know what causes it. We don't really know how to fix it. But here's a medication. And then they kind of look at you like, well, it's your issue. I think that a more humbler approach is that some compassion along with that message. And maybe we should look into the realm of emotional issues, So, yeah, I've been listening to a wonderful book called Your Brain's Way of Healing by Norman Deutsch. That book talks about how the brain can heal, and a lot of people were healed by way of healing. I mean, astounding. People who had horrible brain injury get better, told they would never amount to really anything. This autistic kid, really bad off, uses sound therapy. I mean, it's really bizarre, some of the therapies, but these people get better. It makes us realize, and towards the end of the book, they said, this is how science is. It's not a collective group of everybody's unified. No, There are a few outliers that will say this really worked. And instead of asking, what causes it to work and why can't we teach more people to have it work, they look at it with skepticism. And they use this colorful phrase that if they had this pig who could talk and the pig starts speaking perfect English, they would say, well, that's only one pig. Well, it's the wrong way to go, and so that's how they see it as, well, okay, a miracle happened. So, they would just somehow not include that in their understanding of the world, kind of a reductionistic model. So, but I think I'm going to let this doctor go and go with this other doctor who seems really pretty kind and compassionate, but we'll see. So there is that. I think the other thing is choices. I was thinking about what to talk about tonight. We can get it to a place where we feel like we have no choice but to do what we do, whether it's an addiction, like trying to recover from addiction. It's like I use or I don't use. With anger, I explode all over the place or I stuff it. And I end up, being in trouble in both ways. I think I might sneeze here. Excuse. So we have choices. I could blow my nose. It's kind of like the disease of brokenness, mental health issues, or addiction, or we could call sin sickness. We feel like we don't have choice, and that choice has been taken away. In AA talk, it would be like, I'm powerless. I have to do this. I can't, there's no other choice. And just to pray and to say, we actually have choice. Actually, there's a good segue into some of this. For those interested in historical Christianity, there was a gentleman by the name of Saint Maximus, the Confessor. He's Saint Maximus, we'll just say. And he said that there's two wills of mankind. In fact, it's probably better to back up. Boy, this is getting away from psychology, but I think it's interesting. For those that are Christians or interested, there was a time in Christian history where they wondered, did Christ have one will or did he have two wills? The one will people were called monothelites. Thelimas, or thelima, I think meant will. Light. And so the one-willers said that Jesus could only have done the will of the Father and that had no choice, that his divine will kind of gobbled up his human will. I'm not an expert in it, but that's the gist of it. Well, if that's the case, it poses problems. Yeah, so monophysite, Aaron brings up, is one nature. Similar in the sense that Egyptian Christianity went down this path of monophysites believe that the divine nature gobbled up the human nature. And as a result of that, Christ is more divine than he is human. And that's off. So it shows you the gist of this is that if you don't understand who God is, then it's really hard to understand who humanity is. And does this come back to the topic of psychology? It does. So when St. Maximus says, in fact, I think it's an important part of the story, he's called the confessor versus the martyr is because they didn't kill him. They just chopped out his tongue and cut off his hands so he couldn't write or speak anymore. Talk about the times. And so he said that Christ has two natures. He has a human nature and he has a divine nature. And they worked in tandem with each other. and that he submitted his human nature to the divine nature. So he chose to go to the cross. He chose to die for our sins. He chooses to love us, even though we don't always love him back. So he wasn't compelled. There was choice there. And that's really important for us, because we can feel in this darkness of sin or mental health issues that we just have no choice. Oh, I know what people used to say, the devil made me do it, or doing what comes naturally. Well, no, that would be a mess. So he writes that there are two wills of man. Gnomic, I'm going to spell this out, gnomic, Gnomic, nature, and natural. No, sorry, boy, what am I thinking? Gnomic will and natural will. Gnomic will, probably the easiest way to think about it is willpower. Do I have any willpower? No, it's really broken. Like, I mean, I could overeat things. I could do a lot of stuff. My gnomic will is willpower, and we so often mistakenly try to use willpower to make sure that I don't lust or don't overeat or don't get mad at my neighbor and all this stuff. And bless the heart of good-hearted people that may say, just it's a matter of the will, it's a matter of the will, and the matter of the will. So then people go, oh, so I should willpower this. Well, without realizing it, they're trying to take something that's really, really broken, and in a sense of pride, apart from God's nature or divine energy, try to do it. And no one's saying do it, but this is what it amounts to. And then we fall flat on our face over and over again. The natural will was less broken, he describes. There's unnaturalness in our problems, but natural is this trying to get to church, pick up a Bible and read it, to be able to pray. If that our wills were totally broken, that we wouldn't even do that. And sometimes it's hard to even do that. So it's so helpful to know that there's part of us that is so broken that we shouldn't even go there to try to muster up enough self-will to fix our anger problem or our depression problem or anxiety problem. Yeah, and when I do this, it kind of represents white knuckling it. But the natural will helps me to open up my hands and say, God, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. It might enable me by God's grace to read a book that can inspire me to do the right thing. And then when that right thing happens, never perfectly in this life, but in a way that surprises us, like, wow, God is with me. I have nothing to show. There's no patting on my back that I've done anything good, but kind of an amazement that God can work in someone like me, then that's really the testimony. That's what we share. So anyway, so we have choices as people, even though it doesn't feel like we do. And during this new surge of coronavirus cases or entering the holiday season, dealing with politics, dealing with our neighbors, ourselves, family members, dealing with a lot of people are struggling with the dynamics of who can be with who. Because if you be with these people, then you can't visit us on this holiday because we need to quarantine. People have different value systems in this. What are the choices we make? We don't have to do something just because it's what we've always done. This would be a good time to do something different and to not feel compelled to do things, but to pray and ask God's direction. So it's a good time for that, as always. So I'm open to any questions people have. And I was going to talk a little bit about an experience I had in the mind body um, medicine group. It's a very powerful class. The teachers are medical professionals, counselors who had their own personal journey. And so they've really given their life to professional life to help people who have had chronic pain. And when we think of chronic pain, we think, oh, it's just help them manage it better. But this is like the source of it, the source being repressed rage, repressed anger, um, guilt, shame, fear. And when we repress these things, it seeps out into neck aches and back aches and stomach troubles and TMJ. And, some real interesting stuff, dizziness and tinnitus and foot pain. And they go to every doctor and no one seems to be able to help them. And somehow, at that point, they felt like there was no choice other than to just react to the pain by I've got to make this excruciating pain go away. And sometimes it's mental health pains. And I'm not saying don't take medicine. I mean, it's not about that, but often that becomes the only choice of what we do. But when you're offered like 5 to 10 different choices, it opens you up to be able, I think, to think more clearly about things. This is, yeah, like if I had an eating disorder, which I do actually, but recovered from it mostly. Dieting was this. You either eat so austerely, carrots and celery and something, and you can't really sustain that, or you're eating something really unhealthy like junk food. That's an all or nothing, very limbic brain driven. But if you had 10 choices, it changes things up. It's like, oh, so how can I find those choices in between? Let's talk about amount of food. When you feel compelled to eat everything on your plate and more, like 2 helpings, just praying and saying, God, help me to open up to figure out how to do something different. And I just put this plate in your hands, just not my will, but yours be done. Perhaps he leads you to eat something different or more than you thought you would be eating, but it was healthier or less than what you thought you needed to eat. Because the brain was driven by it just has to be this way. And it's like, no, it can be 5, 6, 7 different ways. That's why there's, in a sense, having more people to give you ideas helps. To see how other people in the 12-step group do their work helps. And then we pray and ask God for that direction. Same thing with anger. We go either extreme one way or extreme the other. Well, maybe there's 10 different ways to say something. And as a therapist, I've taken time to play with how do you say something, 10 different ways. And this would be a fun exercise. Figure out what you wanted to say. Say like you're really, really angry. And you say, and you don't want to sin into this, but I think it's a good idea to figure out how to say something very forceful. Like one might say, knock it off, you're hurting her. You're how would I say, a blankety blank, blah, blah. That's how I talk, but by God's grace. But say like, that's over here. Beyond that might be to push this guy, okay? Even though that doesn't look like Christian behavior, in this week, we actually celebrated the life of St. Nicholas on December 6th. He was a bishop. Boy, we're kind of theological tonight. But what's interesting about this story is he did many good deeds. He helped the poor. He helped see farers, people who journeyed by sea. He helped people who were falsely accused. He would stand up, I think on 3 occasions, go to the court and tell them, no, these people are innocent. Um, the story goes he helped these poor girls that were impoverished, that they could live a life of, we'll say, bad living, to try to make money, that he saved them from that so they could have a dowry to get married. But here we are at the first council, I think it is, where the church was trying to understand the nature of Christ. And there was a guy named Arius who suggested that Christ, being a son of God, the Father, there was a time when he was not. And the church had always believed that Christ was co-eternal with the Father, that he was there from the beginning, that the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit have always been co-equal together. Yeah, it was the first ecumenical council, because that's where Arius was. He gets so mad, St. Nicholas, he slaps Arius. Yeah, can you believe this? Santa Claus is slapping people. Would you want your children to be around such a person? So that was a choice. Strange. People were offended. That's not how we do things. And overall, the church isn't encouraging people to slap people at councils. This was a big council, and this was to help protect the integrity of what had been passed down by the apostles. To be real clear, it was not to create new doctrines. And this is where we get the Nicene Creed. This was at the Council of Nicaea. Anyway, I think he goes to a little prison, but then through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and revealed to all that it was out of great love for Christ that he did this. Now, I've been a Christian for a while and into Orthodox Christianity for a while, but I had never really read any other case except recently. I was reading something from a writer. I don't want to say who, but it was recent. And he was talking about, if you hear someone blaspheme against God, it's okay to slap them. And it's like, whoa. I think it would have to do with their attitude. It's like, wow, I'm so angry. I can't wait to slap someone. Let me go out there and find someone who's, blaspheming God. No, that's not the case. But I think the thinking on that, and this gave me clarity to St. Nicholas, is that when someone is about to murder someone, would you step in and try to do anything to save that person's life? Yes, you would. If someone, like a friend, and you're at a store and you love this friend dearly and you believe in good boundaries, but this friend is going to swipe something, like they're having a momentary break, like this is not a good idea, and is swiping something, going to steal something, you might grab their hand and say, stop, and then the security comes and says, what are you guys doing? I'm trying to get this guy not to steal. We might step in with such abrupt love that says, don't do this. And I think that's what blaspheming is so serious. When someone is teaching something so wrong about God and how it harms others, I think that's where this great love comes in. And see, in our minds, we think, Aaron says it was also to help Arius come to his senses, but it didn't work. He didn't change. Yeah. But yeah, the phrase snap out of it is, I'll slap you to get in touch with things. So back to our spectrum of anger. There may be room for that to save someone's life. And if it go, no, I'd never do anything like that. Well, what if someone's being raped? What if there's something horrible? You want to be able to use that anger to save that person's life. The problem is in our problems, it gets all darkened and it gets mixed up. So the next level, say like, instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Why can't you? Well, what would be a better way to say that? I forgot what our example was. It was very nebulous. But let's say, I think it was someone putting down someone, like, don't speak to her that way. What's wrong? You should be kinder. A more moderate was I'm really concerned. You don't want to speak to someone like that, do you? You're putting this poor person down. I would encourage you not to do that. Milder than that is, could I ask of something of you that, you're putting down this good friend and it's making me angry. I feel bad that you're speaking so poorly of someone. Or, um, I'm concerned. Um, I'm just concerned about the way you're talking. Maybe there's some way you could talk a little bit different than how you're talking about our friend. So over here, you might say, stop being judgmental. And over here, you might say, I'm just concerned about your speech. So see how you can have, it's like gradient of color when you do kind of design work. This is 10% gray. This is like 80% gray. And that helps a lot. I remember talking with my pastor about some prayers and praying, and there's prayers that we pray that are maybe a 20-minute thing. It's called an akathist. I don't want to get too orthodox, but I'm just used to doing that. And he says, well, what if you just do one or two verses? And it's like, oh, it just shows you I hadn't thought it was an all or nothing. So one could add, it would take 1 to 2 minutes. You could add a few stanzas and get through the thing. And this is for people who struggle with cancer. So see, notice how we need those nudges from people to give us options to do something different. Because we do tend to go all or nothing. Oh, a good choice, a good example is like with mask wearing, I think somewhere people have now found themselves more in the middle and realize there's times to really wear masks, times that it's okay not to wear a mask. If you're out in the middle of a field, it's probably safe. If you're at the ocean and there's a breeze, it's probably safe not to wear a mask. Yeah, we might even wear a mask even though we personally don't believe it's protecting anything. But if everybody else is, we want to fit in. That's one choice. Another choice is maybe everybody's not wearing a mask, but a few people are. And you feel bad for those people that are lonely mask wearing. You might wear a mask for that. And people could judge the person saying, well, are you that flimsy in your belief about mask wearing? And it's like but I may say, I'm trying to go out to my brothers and sisters who feel alone, and why wouldn't I join them to help them understand that they're not alone? I may not even agree why they're wearing a mask, but just to help them not feel so alone. So it's so easy to judge and to come to conclusions about things. But here's back how the choices principle fits there is I can choose to step back by God's grace and go, I don't know their story. I don't know their history. Maybe they've made so much more progress from where they were than where they are today. There's that aspect. It could be that particular day they were doing something different. I'll use this story that I started with. So this physician I was seeing, I think I can share this. So 2013, I had to have a biopsy for a prostate issue. And I was scared. I wanted God's will. I was praying God's will, whatever. But I just really would prefer not to have it, as most anybody would. And so we're sitting there, and he did a nice job during the exam. It wasn't really that bad. He made it. So I tried to give a positive to him for that because I had heard stories. But then when we get the results, he goes on talking about this and that. We saw the nurse first. She takes my blood pressure. Of course, it's elevated because my wife and I are sitting there. And he talks about some other things. It's like he's drawing this thing out. And then at the end says, oh, and you don't have cancer. And it's like, well, good, I'm relieved. But I really analyze that. It's like, could he have told us that at the beginning? And what would be his motive to drag it out? Is it like he likes power? And I'll show the dark side. Is he liking power over people? I don't know. It was just odd to me. And I tried to let it go, but I thought I just not sure why you wouldn't come in and say, look, I have great news for you guys. There is no cancer. And then share about things. Yeah, that's how I would have done it. Yeah. But I also tried to think, but he's a surgeon, and surgeons, this is so prejudicial, tend to be people that could look at a body and just do the work of a surgeon and not have to feel the pain of the person they're cutting on. So a lot of times their bedside manner isn't necessarily the best. So whatever. But I had let that go. And then I had this incident, and then there was paperwork that was going back, and no one was. I had called this office 3 times, tried to get, and it was just like a wall trying to get this over. And it was just, it was pros and cons, but I thought, I don't have to go here. And that's kind of why I thought the theme of choices this week. Like, nothing says I have to go here. And it felt funny because I had been there for like maybe 10, 12 years. Yeah, no, I don't need to go. I think that's the thing, there's freedom in Christ. There's freedom to choose. True mental health is having some freedom rather than being compelled to do that. Yeah, Aaron puts out that's the incensive power. Yeah, think incensive power of the soul. Like I'm incensed to good use. Yeah, anger can be used for good. I've heard the phrase in the last year, you've heard of re-gift. Someone gives you a gift and then you give it to someone else. I've heard this phrase, I think it's called reuse anger for something good, or I think they call it rehabilitate, but it's something like not recycle, but repurpose. Yeah, repurpose anger. Yeah, repurposing something is like, for those, I get a mug. In fact, this I got in Alaska. Aaron might recognize this. Yeah, I got this at a bookstore in Kodiak. If I were to not drink out of this and put pens, that would be repurposing it. Is it meant for a pen holder? No, it's really meant for to drink out of. I could put a potted plant in it. So anger, believe it or not, was purposed originally for us to fight sin and to fight evil. It's very strong, powerful energy. But in our darkened world, it gets thrown at our brother, at our sister, at our kids, at ourselves. It's very powerful. And as a result of this power, it can be very destructive. Like we've seen it in our country. We've seen it in war. It eats at people's bodies. They're so angry, they split apart at the seams as if we had seams. Yeah, heart attacks and seething with anger. So if we repurpose anger, and this is partly from this class for self-care, for caring for others by cleaning a whole yard or cleaning a garage, there's something very valuable about it. When we're in that anger cycle, we don't feel like we have choices. That's the problem. It feels like our own adrenaline is taking us for a ride. And then we can't stop ourselves. We just feel like we have to blow up. And then afterwards, we feel so bad. We maybe apologize, and then we go around it again. If we can step outside it, and as Aaron is talking about the first 3 steps of AA, we could talk about that. That's pretty cool. that we get our yeah, we're getting some good feedback here. Thank you guys. It's great to be interacting. Um, we pray and settle down. We say, God, help me. Um, what is it that's behind the anger? That's really a good first look at this. Like, am I feeling ashamed? Am I feeling powerless? Am I feeling hungry, tired, left out? And almost every single anger experience, there's something behind it. You know, a person who's mad, they hit their finger with their hammer. It's physical pain, and then they get mad at the hammer. I remember being mad at a door, trying to get it open, and then my wife actually says, "Erik, what's really bothering you?" And I said, "Well, I want to pass this exam." So then it was underneath it was some fears. The thing about anger is you calm down if you dig at the primary emotion. The secondary emotion, is anger. It's so powerful, and if you can't deal with the anger there, another layer on top of that is criticalness, being just very critical. And then we really think it's their fault. In fact, it may be worth trying to use a whiteboard here. So we shall see. I use this format of YouTube, and it's a lot easier. Look at that. We have choices, people. You don't have to see my face. So, anger is the second thing we feel. Behind it is this container of primary emotions, so I can feel left out. Powerless is a real popular one. When we feel powerless, I guess I'll do that for human interaction. Powerless. Say, like, we feel powerless over the outcome of a surgery, or powerless with our children. We're frightened that they're going to turn out not the way we want. We're feeling powerless over even our own emotions. So then anger is this strange thing that comes in that covers these. You see, this is second, this is first, but this is such a great cover. Say, like, I feel guilty, but I don't want to feel the guilt, so I use anger. Say, like, I feel abandoned, which is very problematic. Abandoned, so then I get angry at the people that are abandoning me. Well, it makes them want to run for the hills even more so. I feel hurt. You know, ones we can really relate to is tired, hungry, and the list goes on and on. So the first question you would ask is, what am I really? Well, first of all, you would pray, Lord, have mercy on me. And then you would ask, God, what am I really feeling here? What's really bothering me? So, for instance, say, like, I would be mad at the governor because he tells us to wear masks. Well, I can't change the governor and I can't change the world, but what is bothering me? Maybe I feel scared that this is kind of made up, but scared that this is the beginning of him telling me what else to do and run my life. Or I'm seeing a whole bunch of people wear masks around me, which makes me really angry. Because why? Well, because I can't control the world is changing around me. So it's really back to fear. Say like it's the other direction. I'm mad that people aren't wearing masks. Why? Because they're trying to live their own freedom, but I feel like they're out of touch with how this could really help us all have a better economy. Because if we get this all handled, everybody like me wanting to control, then we could actually not have to wear masks, or they're insensitive and someone might catch COVID, which then they end up, um, passing it on and someone dying. So that's the thing. There's always something under here, and this we can connect with. Yeah, let's use something other than mass. Let's say that a buddy doesn't invite me to a party, football game. I find out from other buddies that they were invited and I wasn't. And so, say like, but I'm a good person. Say like, that's funny. Let's pretend I'm a good person. And I really think people might think I'm good, but I think there's only one who's good, and those would. So I would hide my anger through being critical. It's a filter where I just judge people and look at um, the world through that lens. Oh, why do they do that? Why do they do that? So I might get with my buddy and come out as passive aggressive or just snippy. Or say, like, I blow at him and say, "You jerk. Gosh, I've invited you to all these parties and you can't even think to invite me." That's not going to get him closer to me. If I say, "Look, I'm sorry, I kind of felt left out. I know it's me. I wish I were stronger, but I have to let you know I really felt left out." And he may go, "I'm so sorry. I just forgot." Or, uh, "We only had a limit of how many people we could have." Or that, if you stay in primary, things work out. If you're over here, it doesn't work out so well. And let's go even farther. I actually blame people. They're the problem. They're the blankety blank. It's so far removed from what's really bothering me. So I say my buddy's an asshole. Um, well, is there anything more? No, that's just how he is. He is a jerk. Well, that's not really usable. It's not really workable. Um, it's better to own it. And that's why people use these I statements. And people say, "Yeah, I believe he's a jerk." No, that's not a real I statement. I statement means I feel. And the magical question is, what am I really feeling? And so we take it from here to not being so judgmental of the world, to own the anger. And behind the anger, it will calm down if you can dig at what some of these. On my website, you can look for the anger as a secondary um, emotion, and it's a handout, and you can really pray about what is really behind it, and it will dissolve it. Um, it dissolves the big pieces of anger that are already there. Now, when you're out and about and you're living your daily life and something hits the fan, dealing with this helps remove the overall anger, but you could have still a lot of anger. Oh, let's look at childhood trauma. Gee, this is a really good one. Say, like, back to this story of not being invited. Say, like, I was teased as a kid and it was a nightmare, and I was always being left out. That's really, really going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. And that's why I'm going to overreact to it, because it is a hurt. I need to go back, forgive those people, work through the pain. I might do it in real life, but probably not. And just have to forgive all the kids that teased me. Oh, and by the way, this physician, I came to the conclusion he's not a bad guy. He's not a bad physician. Anger would so blind me, and critical would so and blame him like he's just a bad person. No, he's a fine physician. In fact, I liked him when I liked him. I think now we're at a place where either maybe he's having a bad day and he's maybe not anti all vitamins or anti supplements, and that's where I will go to him and send a nice letter and see if we can reconcile. But I think that I need to move on anyway, because after a while I have choices, and I think that's going to help me not have more episodes of being critical. Um, um, yeah, yeah, I could spend a whole hour on some of these. I'm going to set this aside temporarily. So let's read what we have here. Yes, anger can be so overwhelming, says J page 99999. You feel like you have no power, then you feel guilty. Yeah, it's interesting enough. Anger initially has a lot of power to it. Like if we compare it to other emotions like grief, grief zaps you. Like grief doesn't propel me to go clean a whole garage. It just doesn't. We feel like we can barely move. Um, it's amazing funerals are put together. Um, yeah, it's just interesting. Fear has more energy. Um, it's enough to save your life. And that's why I'm careful to there are religions that are kind of anti-feeling, and I don't think they mean to be, but the problem is the word emotion is where we get our roots from motivate. And depression often is, I really believe this now more than ever, actually. And I could be wrong and change my views 10 years from now. But depression is like repression. It's, I feel so bad and I don't know how to feel the feelings that then I kind of repress it and I start physiologically shutting down. I don't want bright lights. I don't want to see people. I don't want to get up out of bed. And it could be from years of exhausting myself with anxiety, which is too much in touch with reality, too much sensitivity. And then it sounds like my anti-medicine thing this week, but I'll just throw it in, is I do think that sometimes, not every, because I've seen these cases where people snap out of the depression from Prozac, but the realistic thing is it doesn't always work that way. But a lot of times medication just represses things more. And then years later, the person still has to deal with it. I've seen this. Well, and I won't go there, but I've seen this where people have, and I'm not saying go off medicine. That's why it's really important to know that I'm not saying that if you're already on medicine, but it does kind of push pause buttons on things. But anger, as far as a powerhouse, could really propel us if we let it out in a way that's productive and not turned itself, that I could clean a whole garage. Like maybe a community was destroyed by these violent people that were destroying an inner city, and say like the city had the wherewithal to say no to these people, put them in jail. That's where anger can be used for good. I think a lot of citizens were outraged. Like, how can the city council not do something to protect its own citizens? I mean, that's crazy thinking. So say like they come together and out of their anger and hope, mixed with hope, they're going to repaint the city. They're going to protect the city. They're going to fix this. And that's why when families are broken with anger, and I feel bad, I could almost get teary-eyed thinking about it. I'm not so teary-eyed in session, but these poor families, they're so broken because, and I've been there a little bit, where you get so angry and then you go, this is so sad. I feel like I've just destroyed my own family. What do? you use that very anger to rebuild and to go, I'm never going to let this happen again. I'm going to get anger management. I'm going to um, do something different. I will step outside the house before I curse people or to swing, punch a wall. Or thankfully, I grew up with that, not punching walls per se, but it was, I consider violent. And so I never wanted to have that. And thankfully, my family's pretty peaceful. I'm very thankful for that. But years into it, there was no way else out for us to have these anger issues. So I think anger is good to get out. Curvin says, something behind the anger is very true. When I find myself easily angered, I must be honest as to the real cause. Sometimes being honest with self is the hard part. Yeah, it is. And it's often repressed. Like, I don't want to show my buddy tears. This is a little bit extreme, but tears that he didn't invite me. And do I want to really share that I feel so bad because I was teased as a kid and I didn't have any friends? Would that draw me and my friend closer? It does. That's the interesting thing about this. If we go back to this, so this chart, and this happened, I was sharing this for many years and then something happened here where I just kind of thought about this. This anger disconnects us. This is in the handout here. Anger disconnects me from myself. I don't even know what I'm thinking or feeling. It's a great cover. Criticalness does the same thing. I'm so judgmental and blaming others that it's so far removed from where the real stuff is. Guess what? And this is why if I'm angry at someone and say, what's wrong with you? They're going to step far away from me. They're not going to come closer. They're going to disconnect. I think it's such a great way to get my point across, but no, it doesn't work that way. Okay? Guess what? Moving here connects us with God, ourselves, and others. This anger disconnects us from God, ourselves, and others. I usually write that, but it's hard to do tonight. So that's interesting to me, is that if we can go inward and pray and translate our anger back, it's really, we often will go to tears, we'll often go to sadness, we'll often go to some other place. I've heard the phrase, and it was very simple, that depression is anger turned inward. There's a certain truth to that, but I kind of rejected that. But if I get rid of the repressive aspect of depression, that maybe I am thinking negative thoughts about myself, self-deprecating thoughts, and which I think just come from the enemy too. It's kind of turned inward. So yeah, it's very interesting to connect with ourselves. And by the way, if we stay connected to God, to ourselves, and our other human in front of me, we wouldn't be angry. Because we would be at a good place. I wouldn't say that because I would be hurting them, which hurts me in a sense. I would be disconnecting from God by being pissed off. And let's see, we're getting some good comments here. Aaron says after Curvin, what about the love of pleasure, love of power, and love of money? I think Abba Dorotheos said those are the causes of anger. Yes, he did. It took me a while to pray about those. I heard a holy person recently I met in Seattle. Actually, I can say this. I don't want to make him feel embarrassed. But maybe another time I'll share his link and stuff. But he was so funny. And I might have shared this. Um, he says, St. Macario says, if you want to be free from anger, don't want anything. And then he says, and judge no one. Oh, well, thanks. That's pretty simple. But it's pretty true. If I don't want anything for Seattle, I don't want any expectations from my family tonight. I don't want good sleep or good traffic, or I don't want good health, or I mean, I'm indifferent to it. So if I'm totally free and I want nothing, I can't be angry. And usually anger is rooted in self, love of self. I want things to be the way I want things. So I think other saints have said, and AA, that AA book says, the roots of anger are really self manifested in all these ways. So love of pleasure, yes, that would mean I want my haircut to be the way I want it. I want the good food the way I want it. I want my kids to be the way I want them to be. And people are shocked when I say things that are provocative, like even wanting my kids to be in good health or to have a good job or to be happy is a plan for their life. That's not good. People go, you mean you don't pray for that? I pray for God's will to be done. Because what if they don't have a good job? What if they have problems with health? Then what? See, it doesn't fit in my worldview. So if I really don't want anything other than what God wants for me, and that's what the AA book says, is that we prayed only for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. So then what happens is I get so much joy, and I'm not the epitome of joy, but I'll say I get so much joy that if I get into a place where I want nothing, then I am pleasantly surprised when I get something good. And that's why, if I look back, I was upset with this doctor, mainly because I had asked 3 times for medical records to go to the other doctor. They put them on hold, then they dropped the call. I mean, it was just like, please just do this. And that was pleasure in a sense, love of power. This is probably very true, to have power over others. And I'm going to use my power through a tantrum to get you to do what I want you to do. That's the weirdness of what we've seen over the summer, is that, peaceful protesting is one thing, but being angry, the message is going to be lost. And it's the same thing with me. I may have a really good thing to share with my family, but if I do it in anger, that's not going to work. They're not going to hear the message. By the way, I did hear this, or this came to me one time in a session, and it was pretty interesting. When we yell at someone, we yell because we don't feel like they can hear us. So if I'm in a field, I will yell so that I feel like they can hear me. So if I'm in the same room with someone, why would I yell? Probably the insensitive power of anger, but it could be I'm not feeling heard, but that's the problem, is I'm going down the wrong path. And back to Kervin, is this being honest with self is hard part. I'm still learning to be more in touch with the inward parts. It says in Psalm 50 or Psalm 51 for our Protestant friends, is that God desires truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part, he will make me to know wisdom. That hiddenness gets more revealed through prayer, and love of money. Yeah, that's probably, there are good uses and bad uses, the insensitive power of the soul. Panic attacks. Does anger cause panic attacks, and vice versa? My experience clinically, which means just working with lots and lots and lots of people, you start to see similar patterns, but it's not scientific, because I'm just seeing similar people. You have to see a bigger, but I would, to really get it more scientific, but I would say that they're similar. How are they similar? Well, physiologically, you're using adrenaline, The limbic system goes very black and white thinking. Very black and white thinking. That limbic system is fight the rattlesnake or flee the rattlesnake. It's not, oh, let's analyze the rattlesnake. No, it's self-protective. You have to think fast. Go get your gun and protect yourself. The problem is when we live in a chronic state of that, it's not a good way to live because we're just encouraging that part of our brain to act like that. Let's play video games. How do you win those? By being so reflexive. You're not thinking with your highest, level of thinking. Panic attacks, same thing. Oh, and so anger, same thing. It's all or nothing. You get out of here, I never want to see you again. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But you said you never wanted to see me again. I know, but I didn't mean that. Yeah. And so that's where let's get rid of all police officers. That's probably not a good idea. Just because a few aren't really that good. Well, if we use that same logic, let's get rid of every physician, every counselor, every pastor, every educator. And we can make a case that there are some bad counselors, bad teachers, did bad things to children. By the way, I love teachers. My family, a lot of teachers in it. But I'm just saying a few bad people shouldn't wipe out the whole industry. But that's what happens when people are angry. They just don't see clearly. And I'm not trying to judge them. I'm just trying to point out how true, in my opinion, this is. That so we have to settle down. And I have to start with me. Panic attacks can be a cover for anger. I see that a lot. I don't tend to see that, well, anger in theory could be a cover for fear. But a lot of panic attacks are from nice people that don't want to hurt people. And they stuff. And then it comes out in OCD or panic. And once they work through that, they start to realize I'm really mad at my job. But it's a combination of things. They're not taking care of themselves. St. Porphyrius said you should have no will. Yeah, just not want anything. Just completely align yourself wills with God. Yeah. And that's 12-step issue. It's just true Christianity. And it's nothing we can do in our own strength. Yeah, well said. So, well, I wish you all the best as we enter this Christmas season. I appreciate all the prayer and support I've gotten from people. I think, there's still more in this journey to be done, but it's one day at a time. Anyway, if you like what you see, go ahead and put a like there or subscribe. I try to do these every Tuesday. So I wish you all the best. You guys take care. And I'm going to sign off. Yeah. It is a process. This is, we just do one day at a time. God's will, not ours, be done. Take care. Bye-bye.